Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with today's guest, but as always, we want to give a shout out to our sponsors. Now, please don't hit that fast forward button. These are all companies that I used or got a direct connection to, and I highly recommend them to you. So take 3 minutes, listen to our shout outs, then listen to our great interview, and then go visit these sponsors. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad you did. Here we go. We want to say thanks to Home Campus for their support of the podcast. Go to homecampus.com. It's a platform that you're going to use every single day for things like scheduling, uploading rosters, student athlete eligibility and clearance. Who doesn't do that every day? Um, Home Campus is going to do all the things you do as an AD better, faster, and it's going to give you a lot of time back in your schedule. And all you have to do to get started is go to homecampus.com. That's it. Go to homecampus.com. We also want to say thanks to Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check out their interactive touchscreen video consoles. It's also a great way to share your school's unique history and your proudest moments. The website's vitalsignswalloffame.com. We'd also like to say thank you to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com. That's it. They're going to show you how to set up and sell tickets online for all your events, not just athletics. That's hometownticketing.com. We also want to thank the Ohio University Online Master of Science and Athletic Administration for their support. This is an affordable 20-month online master's program that not only gives you your master's degree, but you'll also complete 11 NIAAA leadership training courses to go towards your RAA or your CAA. You're also going to be part of a nationwide graduate network with connections all across the country. To get started, all you have to do is go to ohio.edu/info/MAA, the Ohio University Online Masters in Athletic Administration. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but as an athletic director, I wanted a platform that was going to work for all of our teams, and Huddle came through like a champ. Go to huddle.com. Turn your school into a Huddle school with the other 8 million users. That's huddle.com. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Social media is where it's at. And if you're not promoting your athletes and your teams, you're really missing out on a great opportunity. And Gipper can turn you into a social media pro in seconds. It's so easy to create social media graphics with their platform. In fact, it's so easy, even I can do it. Go to Gipper.com to get started. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made as an athletic director was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. To schedule a live web demo of their products, just go to sidelineinteractive.com. That's it, sidelineinteractive.com. Let's talk about fundraising. Have you ever spent weeks with a fundraiser and ended up with little, if any, return? You need to go to snapraise.com. Hands down, the best online fundraiser out there. We used it at our school with tremendous success. It works. Go to snapraise.com. You can check out their other great platforms, but if you're looking for a fundraiser, you found it. Go to snapraise.com and get started. We also want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. At our school, we use surveys for everything, coaches, athletes, parents, and the information that comes back is tremendously valuable because most of your stakeholders support your program. All you hear from usually is the complainers. Athletic Surveys lets you listen to everybody, and that's very useful when you're meeting with a frustrated parent, maybe your principal, or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. That's athleticsurveys.com. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We're going out west today, and we're going to be visiting with Julia Allender. She's got an incredible background in athletics. She's going to share that with you, but she is the CEO and co-founder of Beyond the Hype sports. It's got a couple of different applications for you as an AD or as a coach. And again, Julia is going to go into that. But Julia Allender, welcome to the Educational AD Podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, again, you and I connected. I thought you'd be a great guest for our listeners, and that's why we're here today. We always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that quick bio, where you were born, where you grew up. Maybe take us up through your own, high school and the start of your college years, because it's a very cool story. What's the origin story for Julia Allender?
Absolutely. So born and raised San Jose, California. Went to Santa Clara High School, and very early, I'll just kind of preface my high school playing days with I grew up, I went to a small middle school. It was very small. There's about 100 students of us, middle school, junior high, from kindergarten all the way through high school. And so athletics wasn't a prominent thing. They did have sports for us, which was great. But I grew up playing with the boys. I grew up playing basketball on the blacktops at recess and at lunchtime and after school and things of that nature. And I just fell in love with the game of basketball very early. I was super competitive. I loved the challenge of it. And so, but my purpose in life, and very early on in life, I really enjoyed helping people. That's what really drove me. That's what I wanted to do. And so within the sports realm and the sports world, I knew like at 12 or 13 years old that I wanted to coach. And so what I tried to do from that moment, for I know my dad was like, really, there's no money in coaching. But hey, my parents were great. They let me run with my passion. So, but with that in mind, my playing career was very interesting because I kind of viewed it during and in decision making, and not to say that I made the best decisions for my playing career and coaching career. Um, with that in mind, like it was very interesting as a player going through the different levels of play and having that in the back of my head, like, well, that doesn't make sense, and I wouldn't do that as a coach and things of that nature. But anyways, back to the timeline of it all. I went to Santa Clara High School. I graduated in the year 2000. I was a 4-year varsity starter. I was, all state, all NorCal, set some school records, some scoring records. I was a very good 3-point shooter. That was my knack. And I at that time I was a D1 or bust kid, as we call them these days, because I wanted that on my resume. I figured if I had a Division I scholarship and playing career on my resume, that it would help me very much get into the coaching profession and get the job that I wanted. But with that, I with going to the high school that I went to and being kind of the best player on the team, 3 out of the 4 years I was there, there wasn't this constant challenge. There wasn't this constant need to improve. There wasn't this sense of urgency um, and that became very evident at the end of my senior year. And I had many Division II offers, but I was that, I feel like I earned a Division I scholarship and I felt like I was good enough. And so I ended up going to a junior college, which was San Jose City College. And that's the beginning of my playing career.
Yeah. No, again, you and I talked about this prior, and I just want to throw this in there. My career has taken me all over the country, and I was actually in the San Jose area late 90s till about 2000. I was the inaugural athletic director at the Harker School when they started their upper school program. So a little bit familiar with that area. You mentioned that you, in your career, junior high, high school, et cetera, that you had some coaches that they were good examples of how you didn't want to coach. Did you have any coaches that kind of inspired you? Because I know you love the game, but a lot of times it's that coach that helps really light that fire. Any coaches stick out for you, let's say in a positive way?
For sure. And to that statement, I definitely took positive things from coaches that, I maybe didn't have the best experience with, or thought that things could have or should have been different. done different. I will say this about my junior college coach was I learned how to compete. I mean, uh, from the first day that I stepped onto campus and we started playing and we had open gyms and practices, things were very different back in that time where you could have open gyms, is I learned how to compete, right? In my first year, 6 of us played Division I basketball. So our practices were just incredibly competitive and tough. Um, you just, if you want to be good, your sense of urgency comes up and you figure it out really quickly, right? And I was able to start both years for her there. And then I worked with a coach that I took a lot from. His name is Dedrick Brooks. He's still actually a really good friend of mine. And he actually was the boys' high school coach at Santa Clara High School. And before trainers were a thing, um, I worked out with him in the off season and in the summertime. And I've never improved so quickly. I've never learned more about the game so quickly. And that's where I've took those nuggets, those coaching nuggets on how do you get a player to improve within a team and keep that team improving. That has stuck with me the entirety of my career, and not do it degradingly and not just put a team on, it's like, get on the line, we're going to run because you can't figure it out. Um, and so that really, when I saw myself improve, and I've noticed this with players of mine, it's like you jump on, you're like, oh gosh, I'm going to work harder, right? And so he really struck a chord within me because I saw my potential level quickly rise, and then I saw what I could do as a coach.
You mentioned two things already that I just love as a coach, making practices competitive, whether it's a drill or teamwork, but then also the phrase, that sense of urgency. And for me, it was always, we wanted our kids to, want to improve. You mentioned nuggets, and that's what this podcast is all about. We're going to get to those towards the end, but I'm going to put you on the spot right now. What's one of those, let's say, technical or strategic nuggets that your JUCO coach gave you that you put in your toolbox and use later on?
Yeah, I would say, and you kind of touched on this, but the power of competitiveness, the power of, I mean, every drill that we did, everything that we did it was competitive. It had a win and a loss connected to it. And I don't think a practice should be set up solely that way. I think that you have to have time to teach, and you have to give kids and players times to make mistakes and learn. But there was not one drill that didn't have a goal connected to it, that if we didn't make it, we did it again. And I'll never forget a practice we had. We had timed 16s. And so you're running short court back and forth 16 times within a certain amount of time. And we ran that for literally an hour and 45 minutes because there was no give. There was like, this is the standard and you're going to meet it. And that's something that I've taken with me.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, the standard is the standard. Great stuff. Hey, we're going to take a break. Our guest today is Julia Allender. She's the CEO and co-founder, excuse me, founder of Beyond the Hype Sports. We're going to hear more about that later on. But let's take that break. We're coming back with more. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thank you to our good friends at Home Campus. Go to homecampus.com. I'm telling you, it's a platform you're going to use every single day. Things like scheduling, uploading rosters, student athlete eligibility and clearance. Who doesn't do that every day? And a whole lot more. Home Campus is going to do all of these things better. It's going to do it faster, and it's going to give you a lot of time back in your schedule. And like I said, all you have to do is go to homecampus.com. That's homecampus.com. We also want to say thanks to Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards for all the teams, for all the events, or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com and take a look at their interactive touchscreen. That's right, touchscreen video consoles. It's also a great way to share your school's unique history and your proudest moments. The website's vitalsignswalloffame.com. Mention the podcast. They'll give you a nice discount. vitalsignswalloffame.com. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD podcast. Once again, our guest is Julia Allender, the founder and CEO of Beyond the Hype Sports. Julia, you shared how you transitioned from high school. You know, you were looking for that D1 scholarship, but it wasn't there, and you went JUCO. Talk about the next step in your journey.
Yeah, so it was very interesting. Kind of similar to my high school career, but anyways, we were very successful at San Jose City College my 2 years. I think my first year we were ranked the majority of the season, number one, number two in the state. And again, like I said, 6 of us ended up playing Division I basketball. And then in my second year, we weren't quite as good, but we were still pretty good. We won our conference. We went deep into the playoffs, and then, your time's up and it's like, okay, so where are my offers, and obviously not rudely like that. But what happened to me was the same thing that happened to me in high school, was that I had a multitude of Division II offers. And I was really still stuck on this D1 or bust. And what was said to me, and it wasn't untrue, what was said to me is that you're too slow to play Division I basketball. And I was like, well, okay. This conversation, I think that conversation needed to be had maybe at the beginning of my entrance point in here. And those are the things that needed to get worked on. But so on and so forth, it was what it was. And so what had happened is my best friend at the time, her family had moved to Utah, and she played at San Jose City with me as well. And she moved out there after our 2 years was up, and there's a small Division I school up in a small town in the town of Cedar City called Southern Utah University. And about a while after she was up there, she called me and she goes, look, I had talked to them. I've been to their open gyms, and I'm gonna play there, and you should call them. I was like, oh, okay, great. So picked up the phone. I made one phone call, and they said, we thought you had already received a scholarship. You have a spot if you'd like it. And I took it. And in that moment, obviously when you're young, you can go through some emotions and feel whatever, like you got wronged, or that someone didn't do things for you. And then when you coach, you realize how much is actually on a coach's plate, especially at the junior college level, and you can forgive and go, yeah, I get it. But in that moment, what I was like, oh my gosh, there are so many opportunities that I simply had to make one phone call. And these opportunities are being missed potentially because of lack of exposure, and back then things were obviously very different in terms of the ability to see players. But anyways, long story short, played 2 years there, graduated with a bachelor's degree. And I realized I wanted to go back to the junior college level and coach there to give players and student athletes the opportunities that I didn't get and that are there for them. So I came home, came back to San Jose. I got my master's degree quickly. Took me about 18 months, graduated with a master's degree in what's called human movement with a specialty in sports specific conditioning, which was great because at the junior college level, that is, you have to do all of their weightlifting and conditioning, but it also answered my questions as to why I was so slow, right? And why, when I walked into Southern Utah University, I also just had come off minor knee surgery. But when I spent, it was probably about 15 months, well, probably about 12 or 15 months, just consistently disciplined. When I came home for the summertime, I stuck to my workouts. I came back as one of, if not the quickest player there and the best defender. And I went, this stuff is so solvable if you have the right information, right? So came back to the junior college level and started my career at Ohlone College. And was there for 8 years, and then went to Sacramento City College, which is another community college in California, and was there for 5.
I'm going to have you share your coaching resume, if you will, because it's pretty darn impressive. But I want to go back when you get that phone call and it's the coach at Southern Utah asking you to come. Now you'd wanted to be a coach, but was there any awareness in your head that time? Because this is what you do now. You help people get those scholarships. You help train athletes. But back then, was there any awareness of, hey, I could do this or I should do this for other people, help them get scholarships? Or was it still, hey, I'm excited to be a D1 player now?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I started helping student athletes in Cedar City coming out of high school to try to develop them and give them a program and make phone calls and things of that nature, because it just was very evident for me that it's not complicated, right? It's not far-fetched, that it is very, very achievable, again, with the right information and the right tools. So yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm going to do.
All right, well, we're going to jump into that in our next segment, your Beyond the Hype program. But let's talk, and when I say let's, I mean you, talk about your coaching career because it is pretty darn impressive.
Sure. Yeah, so I was a junior college head coach for 10 years, 5 of those being at Ohlone. I was an assistant there 3 years prior to. As a head coach at Ohlone College, I won 3 conference championships. I went to the NorCal playoffs all 5 years. I ended up in I believe, the Sweet 16, 3 or 4 out of those 5 years. Had a couple undefeated conference seasons. Went to Sacramento City College, took over a program, I think in the previous year before I got it, had won 2 or 5 games. In my first year, I won 5 or 8 games. In my second year, I won 21 and was ranked number 4 in the North. Um, playing in the toughest conference in the state, which is the Big 8 conference, and then just continued for the next 3 years, making the playoffs, I think all but one of those years, which was my first year, which is, not easy to do playing in that conference. I finished in the top 4, I believed, all 5 years. But I think more importantly for me, and I do state this when people ask me about my coaching career, is the amount of players, the amount of student athletes that I moved on to the 4-year level. I mean, it's great to go win games. It's just not the purpose of that level. And I moved on anywhere from like 75 to 80% of the players that came through my program and who wanted to play at the 4-year level. They were able to, I would say just about everybody who wanted to play at the 4-year level got themselves a spot in a scholarship to play college basketball and then continue with their education. So that's what I'm most proud of.
Well, great minds think alike because that was going to be my very next question. Of all the kids that you sent on to that next level, can you just share, and I know it's hard to pick out one, but just can you share one or maybe 2 success stories? This kid was not getting the calls or the recruits, and let's go ahead and say it, you helped place that kid.
Sure. Yeah, I would say there's probably 3 that really stand out to me. One was a kid that walked into my program, played for us at Ohlone College, and who was gosh, how do I say this? Not very skilled. um but a really good kid and a really, really hard worker, right? And you go in every time I work with a kid or bring them in, I go, good, so what's your goal? Because they all need goals. And they go, I want to play at the 4-year level. And I'm like, oof, this is gonna put me to the test, right? But I, didn't ever say anything. My thing is like, great, here's the skills you need to acquire. This is what you need to do every week, every day. Here's your markers you need to hit. And they're like, great. And they worked and they worked and they worked. They ended up starting their second year. They ended up becoming an all conference player. And they got a scholarship and played college basketball at the 4-year level and graduated with a bachelor's degree. And it was like, I think that just re-solidified what I've always said is there's so many opportunities if someone is willing to do the work. Obviously, you have to have the skill set, right? And you need the exposure. Then I had a kid who was an an average high school, point guard, out of the Bay Area. But I liked her. She was very gritty, very tough, had a lot of qualities that you need to succeed, that one needs to be able to see, and just was underdeveloped skill wise, right? And this is again another example. It's like, good, what's your goal? And she goes, this is my goal. I want a Division I scholarship. And I'm like, great, let's do it. Right. Sorry. Somehow I'm gonna turn that off. Here's what you need to do in order to do it. And this kid just was in the gym, always asking for workouts, always watching film. The hardest worker, the toughest kid, the grittiest kid, and then ended up getting a Division I scholarship. And again, graduated, got her master's degree. And then a similar kid at Sac City, probably had a little more skill set coming in, but was underexposed, undersized. And then you just have to understand, like, what's the skill set you as an individual player needs in order for you to play at the Division I level. And as a coach, you have to be committed to that being the number one priority and winning being second. And those are three stories that really stand out for me.
Oh, and I'm sure there's a ton more, but thanks for sharing those today. We're going to take our next break, but when we come back, we're going to take a deep dive into Julia's platform, Beyond the Hype Sports. We're going to approach it from two different angles. So stay with us, but we're coming back. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank our good friends at Hometown Ticketing for their support of the podcast. Hometown Ticketing is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. It's digital ticketing that offers more. And if you go to hometownticketing.com, their team is going to show you how to set up and sell tickets at your school, not just for your athletic events, but things like school plays and concerts, school dances, even graduation. And here's the best part. Every school gets assigned a dedicated client success manager that's going to provide you hands-on support every step of the way. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com to get started. It's digital ticketing that offers more. We'd like to thank the Ohio University Online Master of Science in Athletic Administration for their support. This affordable 20-month master's program focuses exclusively on interscholastic athletic administration. And when you're done, you're not only going to have your master's degree, you'll have 11 NIAAA leadership training courses to go towards your RAA or your CAA. You're also going to be part of a nationwide network with connections in athletics across the country. To get started, all you have to do is go to ohio.edu/info/MAA, the Ohio University Online Masters. And we'd like to say thanks to Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I wanted a platform that was going to work for all of our teams, and Huddle came through like a champ. Our coaches, our student athletes, even our parents just loved everything about the Huddle platform. Go to huddle.com and join the 8 million users and turn your school into a Huddle school. Hey, welcome back, everyone. We're visiting today with Julia Allender, the CEO and founder of Beyond the Hype Sports. Let's talk about Beyond the Hype Sports. Now, we're going to give out the website and all that contact information in this segment, but share with our listeners what it is, how they can find out more, and I think the important, why it's important to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And before that, I'll just also quickly just share why I started it. And so I think the obvious is the junior college portion is me as a player and as a coach. When I would look to move these kids onto the 4-year level, right? We know at the coaching level, at the 4-year level, the coach turnover is high, right? Every year, I mean, it's just super high. So contact information changes and changes and changes and changes. And I would spend weeks tracking down email addresses, tracking down new phone numbers of 4-year coaches at, NAI level, division, NC2A division 3, 2, and 1 levels, right? Because you're going to have players at the junior college level that are going to fit all the different levels, right? And I would spend weeks doing that. I would spend weeks finding and getting their film and putting it on a platform that's easy to send to coaches. We have Huddle. You have Huddle. Most schools do now, which is great. And this platform syncs with Huddle. And then their academic information, their transcripts, right? And so there's a lot that goes into just the recruiting process in getting that student athlete the proper exposure with everything that the four-year coach needs. And so I jumped into the AAU world in 2016 or 17, I believe, right? I sat at these AAU tournaments for years recruiting, and I was like, oh my gosh, the amount of bad coaching, the amount of bad advice, the things that are getting said, it got really hard to watch. So instead of being a bystander and a critic, I'm like, okay, good. Well, let me jump in. Let me see if I can do this a little differently and offer student athletes in high school the same services and the same type of coaching that I was giving to my junior college players, because it was just very successful. And so I did, and I did it for about 4 years and had the same success rate, moved more kids on to the Division I level than came through my junior college program, just because I'm working with a higher caliber high school student athletes. But had parents from different AAU teams reach out to me and go, hey, can we come to your program, or what are you doing, and what is the successful actions? And so having all that experience and all that knowledge and all that hands-on experience, I go, okay, I'm familiar with the platforms that are out there already, but they don't offer specific things that are a must for high school student athletes and junior college student athletes to be able to get to the next level and get the scholarship that they want. And first and foremost, right, that is exposure, right? And so the first thing that I would say 95%. Now, if you're going to Duke and you're going to North Carolina, or you're going to a Power 5 school, you don't need me. You don't really need any recruit service, right? If you're probably a top 5, 10% in your sport. So this is not who I'm speaking to, or who the platform is geared towards, but it's exposure. So how can a student athlete at a very reasonable price be able to reach out to any four-year coach in the country that they want, right? And so that's what we provide. And then within that reach, how can they have film that is quality film that they're going to want to see, maybe some highlights, all of your academic information. Are you a qualifier, your NC2A eligibility, clearinghouse number, your coach's contact, and your social media in a snapshot, right? And that's where I went, this is a must. This is so valuable to any student athlete in any sport who wants to play college sports, right? And so that's the basis of it. Now, within all of that, I also was familiar with and realized that there were certain things that certain nuggets, I guess we can call them, or routines or successful actions that I gave student athletes that were different from maybe these other recruitment platforms like NCSA and sports recruit and things of that nature, not to say that they're bad. And that's also what everyone gets. They get, how do I achieve my goals? What is a goal? What drives my goals, right? How do I the importance of injury prevention and conditioning in my sport. What do I say to a four-year coach, right? And so there's all these different things that they get within the Beyond the Hype. And so that's the reasoning, and that's kind of the basis. There's obvious within that, I do provide different levels of service, but this is for any student athlete in any sport to go ahead and get in charge and in control of your own future and of your own recruitment, because the worst thing anyone can do, which is what I did, was put it in somebody else's hands.
Yeah, no, having spent a lot of time as, a high school coach, a college coach, I remember 100 years ago, my own recruiting experience, and then doing it with my own kids who all played at the college level. There's just so many things that can impact in a positive way for that student athlete. One thing that we always try to talk about with kids and with parents was the idea of finding the right fit. What are some things that you do with Beyond the Hype to help ensure that it's a good fit?
Yeah, so the first thing in fit, obviously is going to be location, in my opinion, right? A student athlete needs to be willing to be located in wherever that city is or that small town. Can they live in snow? Can they be that far away from family? A lot of people want to believe that they can, but it's not always the same. It's not always. So one thing that the platform that Beyond the Hype does a really good job of providing is we provide all of that information, right, within the service. This is no extra service, but you can find the school, see it on a map. What does it look like? What's the student population? What's the tuition? What's around campus? And then if we have specific information on that program, right? Because the next thing would be, well, does it provide the academic major that you are looking to go into, right? And because at the end of the day, college athletics is college athletics, and that academic portion is going to be beneficial for after college athletics. Not that anyone shouldn't try to play professional sports. So all of that is provided within. What's the majors? What does it look like? What's the class size, right? And then when we have additional information about that specific sport program, we provide that. And that's going to be what are they looking for, right? Do they need your position in that next year? Does that school have a high transfer rate? Transfer portal adds a whole nother element to the recruiting process and makes it so much more important for student athletes to have something like this where they can establish relationships very early with college coaches and establish a lot of them. And then the higher the service, the more the service that one wants or needs, then we're going to go like, hey, yeah, you this is a good fit for you. This coach is going to do this, right? The more intricate we can get with that student athlete and with those parents and with those families and understand the playing style of that student athlete and go, okay, good. So your skill set does fit this program. And so this would be a good fit. And so those are additional services and things that we do.
Right. And again, you and I talked about this. There's a lot of programs out there. People have a lot to choose from. You not only have the service, but you've got that background as a player, as a coach, as a successful, recruiter, if you will. The website is very cool, very easy to understand. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of different levels you can get involved. We'll share this at the end of the podcast, but again, I'll go and share the website, beyondthehype.net, I believe. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And if one of our listeners, I think you got a great resource here. If one of them wanted to reach out, connect with you, find out a little bit more, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, so you can contact us directly through the website. So again, beyondthehype.net. You can email direct, it's coach@beyondthehype.net. Those are the best ways. You can also look at our Instagram page is beyondthehype__. Those are the best methods to reach out. And I do want to make sure I add this in terms of, so we have services for individual players, right? So it's $25 a month, I wanted to come in and make this very affordable for everyone to use, right? And be able to achieve those goals of theirs, right? So an individual player can purchase this. But what I think the larger benefit may be is that an athletic department can purchase this for every one of their student athletes at a very reasonable price, no matter how many student athletes that they have, 600, 700, whatever it is. Every one of those student athletes would get this platform, and then they can start driving their own recruitment process.
Oh, wow. What a great deal. Okay. Well, again, we'll give this out again at the end of the podcast, but beyondthehype.net. Check out the website, get in touch with Julia, see all the things that they can do for your student athletes. There's also another aspect to Beyond the Hype, and we're going to take another break, but then Julia's going to share that. So please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank our good friends at Gipper for their support of the podcast. These days it's all about having a presence on social media. And if you're not promoting your kids or your teams, you're really missing out. Go to Gipper.com. Their team will have you turned into a social media graphics expert in seconds using their platforms. And it's so easy, even I can do it. Go to Gipper.com. It's used and trusted by over 4,000 high school and college programs across the country. It's professional graphic design made easy. That's Gipper.com. Mention the podcast, they'll give you a nice discount. Gipper.com. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo to see their score tables and their score boards in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made as an AD was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. We use it for home games, of course, but we also used it for pep rallies, for signing ceremonies. It's tremendously versatile, and their customer service is just outstanding. Go to sidelineinteractive.com to get started. That's sidelineinteractive.com. And we want to thank our good friends at Snap Raise. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and ended up with little, if any, return on investment? Stop right here. Go to snapraise.com. Hands down, the best online fundraiser out there. We used it at our school with tremendous success. Our coaches loved it. Our parents loved it because it works. Go to snapraise.com. You can check out their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, you found it. It's snapraise.com. Welcome back to the Educational AD Podcast. Once again, our guest is Julia Allender. She's the CEO and founder of Beyond the Hype Sports. Julia, you shared the recruiting aspects of Beyond the Hype, but there's also an important part, again, based on your experience, training, success as a high school and college athlete and coach. So can you share with our listeners the other part of Beyond the Hype Sports?
Sure. So, yeah, we have a performance training aspect to it, which is all online based, which is great. And going back to my experience as a player, and then my educational background in human movement, which is a combination of exercise physiology and kinesiology, but you get to learn, what makes the body go and things of that nature. The other part of this, which I think is extremely important, that especially at the high school level does not get done enough, and maybe at the junior college level as well, is the injury prevention portion of strength and conditioning and of the athletics program, right? We know someone tears their ACL, right? It's a big injury. Now, it's not an injury that stops anyone from achieving their goals, but done at a crucial point in time in their career, like let's just say their junior season going into their senior season, it's tough, right? Because that's probably one of the most highly recruited times of a high school student's career, right? So anything that we can do to prevent injuries and strengthen and condition and make one a better athlete, the better that athlete's chances are going to be. And to kind of like, there's 4 facets to a student athlete, right? There's academic. Are you academically qualified? And we do have a portion on this. It's an incredible piece of software that takes a student athlete's academic, that we take their transcripts, we put them into this program that has all these NC2A and NAIA qualifications. And then this report gets printed, and it tells you exactly what levels you're qualified for, what's missing for those qualifications, what's your core GPA, things of that nature. And then it tells you what classes you need to take and what grades you need to take in order to meet those qualifications at both the NC2A Division 1, 2, 3 and NAIA levels. Incredible, right? So if you're not academically qualified, I don't care how good you are, right? It's not going to happen. So you have the academic portion, you have the technical, what technical skills for the sport you played and the position you play do you have to have in order to, one, be recruitable, and two, be successful, right? And then we have the performance, the athletic performance, right? Strength and conditioning. One needs to be bigger, stronger, faster. And in that, injury prevention, right? The biggest thing that I was like, oh my gosh, at the Division I level when I played was that I'm 5'7" and I'm guarding a 6'2" shooting guard who moves like me and shoots like me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, right? So they're bigger, stronger, faster. So what can I do to counter that or be faster than them simply? And then we have the mental performance training. And this is something I'm extremely passionate about as well. And we haven't quite integrated this yet into Beyond the Hype. I'm still building it, and this is a hot topic right now, but mental performance training and mental performance success, or just mental performance, is kind of that make break point, kind of that point where that player is going to go from good to great, and they're going to be able to take that next step and get head and shoulders above their competition, right? That they can consistently perform, that they can perform under any situation. Um, you know, there's no point in a game that phases them, right? And there's, we talks about peaks and valleys and things of that nature, and it's like this pretty level kind of grade continually going up. And so those are, I call them the 4 pillars, and I talk about that in a lot of the materials and courses that I give anyone who comes on with Beyond the Hype. And so how do you find out what are those things needed, and then how do you get there? And it's how you get there that gets missed all the time with student athletes and coaches and bad coaches. They can tell you, you need this, that, or whatever, and then they walk away from you and you're like, well, okay, so how do I get there? Right. And that was one of the extremely successful pieces to my coaching career is I walked players through. I didn't walk them through. I showed them and I provided an environment and go, look, this is what you have to do. And those who did it moved. And so that's kind of the performance piece that we also provide through that, what's, for your sport, the skill set, the academic piece, which is huge, athletic performance and injury prevention, and then the mental performance piece.
Now, you mentioned for the recruiting services that it's an online, and then there's obviously communication. The performance is also available online, correct?
Yeah, all this is available online. We obviously live in an online age, and I try to be accessible for anyone, anywhere. And it is, yeah, it's all online. It's all course driven. Some of them are going to be apps on your phone. Some of them you'll log into, which you can also log in through your phone, but it gives you things that you can do. And I think one of the biggest things that student athletes have to, what's the word I'm looking for? Create, find, do, is they have to be able to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps
Right.
and go. And so we provide this to you. And I found that successful student athletes, they go, right? And so that's why it can all be done online.
Yeah, the whole perseverance, resilience, recovery aspect, it's a skill like speed and strength, and it needs to be trained. Sounds like a great program. I mean, it all sounds really, really cool, but I want to go and backtrack to the previous segment about the recruitment aspect. You mentioned that an athletic director can sign up, their entire, school, all of their student athletes. Can you share an example of how that has worked out, with a whole athletic department using your platform?
Sure. Yeah, I've spoken to a number of athletic directors about this, and just trying to find. Obviously, don't want to walk in and tell anyone how to do their job. I've never been an athletic director, right? So definitely not my intention. But when I was having conversations, I was just interested first, like, is this something that is useful, or what do you run into? And a couple things that really struck with me, which I was like, oh, okay, I can maneuver this and make sure that this program sticks to these things. Is one is that I had an athletic director tell me, yeah, I have parents say to me that they don't feel like their coach does enough, right? Not that that coach is a bad person, they just don't have the tools, they don't have the resources. And anyone who knows, the majority of high school coaches are basically working for free, right? And so that was like, okay, good. So that's definitely something that this can come in and fill that void. Second thing that they told me was, I don't want another, I basically don't have time for another thing that I have to do and implement in essence, right? Where they're very busy in terms of all the things that they have to handle, especially a school that has a lot of sports. Is this something that I have to be super involved with? And the answer is no, right? We work with the coaches, we work with the student athletes directly and their parents. They get a phone number that they can call. And it's just very seamless in that process of collecting information, having everything available for them to understand, learn. If there's any hiccups, they have a phone number. They don't have to involve the AD. So I wanted to kind of preface it with that because those are some of the things that has come up. Um, but yeah, in terms of helping athletic departments, right? Athletic directors and coaches are finding that student athletes are more driving their own recruitment process, right? They're getting themselves in front of more college coaches. They're having conversations earlier in, and they're having more opportunities being presented to them. And when you do that with a student athlete, ultimately just how the universe works is that if I'm trying to achieve a goal and I'm like, and suddenly that seems a little more achievable to me and a little more doable, and there's a little more belief behind me, I'm going to reach a little bit harder, and I'm going to work harder, and I'm going to do more, and I'm going to be better in the classroom, right? And I'm not going to do as much stuff I shouldn't be doing off the floor, right? Things tend to kind of separate in that, and they get on this more straight path, and that's what programs have seen. And the offers there's more offers coming in, and offers that weren't there before. And so yeah, it's been very successful, and they're very happy with it.
Well, it sounds like a really cool aspect. The one thing that athletic directors, even coaches, don't have an abundance of is time. So here's something that can, help them continue to service their student athletes at a high level, and it's not going to take them any time. Very cool stuff. Well, Julia, this has just been very cool spending some time with you, get to know you a little bit better, but we're not done yet. We always wrap up with the athletic director's toolbox. Now, you just mentioned that you're not an AD, but you know your way around the world of athletics, and I know you've worked with some athletic directors before. So we're going to take our final break, hear from Athletic Surveys, who sponsored this segment. When we come back, I'm going to challenge you to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. So let's take that break. And when we come back, we're going to see what Julia Allender puts into her athletic director toolbox. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment of our podcast. My school, we use surveys for just about everything, for coaches, for kids, for parents. And athletic directors already hear back from one group, and that's the complainers, the people who want to gripe about everything. But that's really only a small percentage. Athletic Surveys is going to create a custom survey that's going to connect you to the 98% of your stakeholders that support your program. And that information is tremendously valuable, especially when you're meeting with a frustrated parent or student athlete, or maybe your principal, or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. That's athleticsurveys.com. Well, it's that time of the podcast. We have been visiting today. It's been a great visit with Julia Allender, the CEO and founder of Beyond the Hype Sports. Has a tremendous background as an athlete, as a coach, as a recruiter. But right now, I'm going to challenge her to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job. But I'm only going to let her put 3 things in the toolbox. So, Julia, what 3 items are going to go into your new athletic director toolbox?
Sure. The first one would be just to show continual support and belief to your student athletes that they can further their playing career and their academic career at the college level. I think statistically, we know that individuals who play college athletics are more successful in life. You learn more things, you have the ability to persevere and break barriers and things of that nature. So that would be the first thing. The second would be, I worked for two very, very different athletic directors as my time as a coach. And I would say, you definitely want to provide coaches with resources and instruction and things of that nature and a vision, a shared vision. But at the same time, you don't want to micromanage. I don't think any coach is the same. And I think you're going to have some coaches who can just go, and some coaches who are going to need that extra handhold and things of that nature. But again, I don't think two are alike or two are the same. So treating every coach as an individual. The third, and so I have spent actually the last 4 years officiating men's and women's college basketball at the Division II and lower levels, and it's been eye-opening. I've actually really enjoyed it, surprisingly enough. I feel like somewhat like I'm playing again as compared to coaching. And throughout my coaching career, I have had some moments where I was not the nicest. Thought I was, acted like a crazy woman on the sideline. And there was a point in time where actually I was asked to speak to officials, to college officials. And I don't know why they chose me. And I had an official tell me, and this is where my viewpoint changed. She said, coaches should have to take the same test that officials take. And I'm like, oh no, we don't need to take the test. We know the rules, right? Immediately get defensive. I'm driving home and I'm like, I've never read the rule book. Like, I have no idea what I'm yelling at. How I talked to officials, how I interacted with them was very, very, very different. I was asking more questions. Now, sure, did I get fired up? Yes, most of the times because I was frustrated with my team. But in today's world, it's tough. It's the behavior of parents, the behavior of fans to have the right to yell things and say things to officials that are you're just being a bully, right? Now we have control over players as officials, and that is God directors in their game.
I don't know if you were getting it, but we had kind of an unstable internet connection there for a minute. I don't
Oh,
know if
okay. Yeah, you froze a little bit.
I don't know if it was my end or your end. You never froze, and I could always hear your content. So I just paused it. It looks like we're back now. When you hear that prompt, recording in progress, just go and pick up where you were at. It'll just be that little, instant glitch when people are
Sure.
listening. Okay, here we go.
I think athletic directors are one of the few individuals who actually have that power and can change that culture within their gymnasiums of just not allowing it, right? It's okay to cheer and to badger back and forth a little bit, but it's just not okay to be a bully. It's just not okay to degrade and belittle. And I don't think it's a gray area. I think it's very black and white. And I think it's unfortunate that, and especially at the lower levels, that this is where we've come to within sports and competition, because there's nothing like high school athletics. There's nothing like college athletics. And to kind of taint it with these unfortunate things makes, it's tough. It's tough to be an official in this day and age. And I think we can change that. So, and then lastly, of course, I would say beyond the hype. I just think I without a doubt know that if I would have had this when I played high school athletics, I wouldn't have needed the junior college route. Not to say that the junior college route is bad. I obviously have dedicated a lot of my career to it, but I had the skill set. And a lot of coaches that I share this with and athletic directors say the same thing. If this tool was of avail to me, I would have played college sports, right? And I think it's kind of a duty to help student athletes and give them a tool like this.
Well, talking about tools, I love all of them. Certainly, as an official myself, I love the sportsmanship emphasis, but all of them are great. Support your coaches, provide resources, very cool stuff. One more time, if somebody wants to reach out, find out more about Beyond the Hype, or just pick your brain, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, so you can obviously go to the website. Again, it's beyondthehype.net. And then the email address, that's the best way, is coach@beyondthehype.net.
Well, Julia, thanks again for taking time out of your busy schedule to share with our listeners. All the best moving forward, and let's get you back on the podcast down the road.
Yeah, Jake, thank you very much and happy to do that.
For listeners, we're happy that you're listening. And just a reminder, we upload all of our recordings to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do this just about every day with new content and best practices. So we'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast.